So Canelo Alvarez versus Jaime Munguia is apparently set and happening next for May 4th. And this is actually pretty decent news. And I'll break down why I believe this is actually pretty good news that this fight is happening next. Now, obviously, it's not amazing news. Amazing news would have been Canelo Alvarez versus David Benavidez for May 4th. That's the fight we all want to see. It's the fight that makes sense. I've made multiple videos breaking down why Benavidez deserves the big fight over pretty much anyone else that is in contention for a Canelo Alvarez fight, aside from obviously Beterbiev and Bivol, but we know Canelo's not fighting either of those guys next. So I already broke down why it should be Benavidez. However, the reason this is still considered good news in my opinion is I expected Canelo Alvarez to fight Jermall Charlo next, and I'm very glad that he's giving the fight to Munguia over Charlo. And I'll give you a few reasons why. Now, first of all, I'd probably still favor Charlo to defeat Munguia at this point. I'm not really sure. I do consider it a very tough fight for me to predict. A few years back, I would have very comfortably picked Charlo, but time has passed. Munguia's gotten better and Charlo's gotten worse. And I feel at this point it's a very, very tough fight for me to predict. But the reason I would actually prefer a Munguia fight is because I do not want to see Canelo Alvarez fight another Charlo brother. We just saw him fight Jermell. Seeing him fight Jermell and then Jermall back-to-back, I don't want to see that. I don't really see how anyone could be interested in seeing that. We all know Canelo would beat Jermall as well. Probably not as easily as he beat Jermell, but in a relatively comfortable fashion. And Munguia is a fresh new face, and we've seen so many tune-up fights for Jaime Munguia that I actually think it's going to be fun to see Jaime Munguia in a real fight, in a genuine matchup, a fight that isn't a guaranteed dominant or guaranteed stoppage win for Jaime Munguia. It'll be fun to see him actually in a real fight already. So I'm actually looking forward to seeing him and Canelo Alvarez take each other on. I think it'll be good for the sport. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's not the best fight that could be made. I'm very annoyed that we're not getting Benavidez next. I'm being fully honest with you guys. And I do think it's kind of funny how Canelo Alvarez had this massive announcement scheduled, and the announcement that he eventually made where everyone tuned in and everyone was anticipated for it, and his announcement was that he was going to fight an American on May 4th, and now he's fighting a Mexican on May 4th. So it's kind of funny how that entire announcement was for virtually no reason. He did not need to make that announcement at all. There was no point for it to happen because he didn't even keep what he said. Him splitting up with the PBC is definitely a main reason why he's taking on Munguia next. If he split up with the PBC and ended up fighting David Benavidez, it would be kind of contradictory and kind of unnecessary for him to even leave the PBC in the first place. I mean, obviously he could have renegotiated once he's a free agent, but it would complicate a lot of things and it would cause a lot of friction and issues. So him leaving the PBC and then taking on Munguia does make sense. And I want to give you guys some of my thoughts on the fight when it does happen. I'll be straight up honest with you guys. I don't think this is going to be a walk in the park for Canelo Alvarez stylistically. I think stylistically Munguia will actually give Canelo a lot of problems. And the reason I see Munguia giving Canelo a lot of problems is very simply off of work rate. Canelo Alvarez is a guy who does not throw that many punches. He's very selective. He fights in spurts. And when he takes on someone like Munguia, who does have a good chin, he's not going to go down easily. I'm not even sure if Munguia has been dropped in his entire career. I don't remember him getting dropped. I know he's been hurt, but I don't remember him getting dropped. His defense has gotten better. He's gotten better as a fighter overall. I see him giving Canelo a lot of problems, a lot for him to handle. I would still pick Canelo Alvarez to win. I feel the skill gap will separate them to a point where even if Munguia fights a really good fight, which I expect him to, it won't be enough. But I probably see Canelo winning an 8-4, 7-5 decision here. I really don't see him dominating Jaime Munguia. I don't see him making a statement against Munguia. The way I see him winning this fight is I see him letting the cleaner, crisper shots and winning rounds off of accuracy and punch placement and possibly hurting Munguia throughout the fight. But I see him giving away a lot of rounds. Munguia does have a good chin because he's been hit so many times and we still don't recall him ever going down. He has a really good chin. His defense is very bad, but it has gotten better. His defense isn't terrible, but obviously Canelo is going to be able to exploit that. But I don't see Canelo Alvarez putting Munguia out with one shot. I don't see him stopping Munguia. I don't see him dominating Munguia. I think Munguia is going to outwork him for probably most of the fight. Probably 9 to 10 out of 12 rounds Munguia will outwork him in. Maybe even all 12 of those rounds. But I see Canelo Alvarez doing the better work throughout the fight and getting a competitive decision. It's going to be a really good matchup, though. I'm actually looking forward to it. Apparently, Jaron Ennis versus Cody Crowley is the co-main event. This is all alleged. I mean, I'm not really sure if that's going to happen now. When I checked Bad Left Hook, Canelo Alvarez's fight for May 4th, it was against a TBA, and the co-main event was Ennis and Crowley. However, I don't think that's going to happen now, since Canelo will not be fighting Munguia on Showtime, from what I assume. It's probably going to be on the Zone, so I don't know what the card's going to look like. But this is a good fight. This is a decent matchup. Munguia is a guy who has been taking on gatekeepers throughout basically his entire career. He's taken on guys that aren't garbage, aren't bums, aren't walking the parks, but guys where if he took them on a few years ago, it would be a very close fight, but he fights them right when they're slipping, right when there becomes some separation. I mean, if you look at the John Ryder fight, if he took on John Ryder before Canelo fought John Ryder, or even when Canelo fought John Ryder, instead of it being Canelo, it being Jaime Munguia, that would have been a really tough fight for Jaime Munguia. John Ryder would have given him a lot of problems. It would have been very difficult for him. But after the Canelo Alvarez fight, he took not that much time away, but he took a lot of punishment in that fight. He was pretty demoralized from that fight. He got dropped, got, I believe, a broken nose. And then he took on Munguia after, and by the time Munguia fought him, I felt there was a bit of a skill discrepancy between the two. When he fought Sergey Derevyanchenko that fought Triple G would have beaten Jaime Munguia. He fought the Derevyanchenko that already lost to Carlos Adames, and the Charlo war. That Charlo fight was a war and a brutal fight for Derevyanchenko. He fought him after Triple G, Charlo, and Adames, and he still barely escaped with a win against Derevyanchenko. I mean, this is a guy that's still very raw, and it's understandable why he's still being moved slowly. He has 43 fights, but he's still very young and still has a lot to learn. I think the Canelo Alvarez fight's going to be too much too soon. He'll give it a very good effort, and I do believe he'll come back after the Canelo Alvarez fight as a champion and accomplish a lot in the sport after losing to Canelo, but I see Canelo Alvarez getting the job done and pulling off the victory. Jaime Munguia, record 43-0, 34 knockouts. He's ranked number 3 on BoxRec currently in the middleweight division. He was a champion at 154, holding the WBO. His record in championship bouts is 5-0 with 2 knockouts, and he's 2-0 with 1 knockout against former or current world champions. Now, that's actually a very underwhelming statistic. When you look at Munguia having 43 pro fights and having 5 title bouts and being known as a champion, and as I said, having 43 fights and him only being 2-0 against former current world champions, one of those fights being against Saddam Ali, the guy he took the title from, and then against Liam Smith, that was literally his first or second title defense of that belt, and that happened years ago. So since Liam Smith, which was all the way back in July of 2018, Jaime Munguia has not fought one current or former world champion, which actually surprises me a lot, but it doesn't surprise me that much. Because if you look at his resume, he's fought a lot of title challengers, but he's never fought any champions. Spike O'Sullivan never won a belt. And that was actually a really tough fight for Munguia. He did not look that good in that fight. I forgot that fight even happened. Toriano Johnson never won a belt, even though he was a contender. Gabe Rosado never won a belt. All those title fights he's had, he's never won a title. Derevyanchenko never won a belt, even though he's deserved it at least once. There's a couple occasions where many people felt he deserved the title. The Jacobs fight, the Triple G fight. And John Ryder never won a belt. That's a guy who I felt deserved the win against Callum Smith and probably should have been a champion in his own right. But technically, Munguia is only 2-0 with 1 knockout against former or current world champions. As I mentioned, he fought Saddam Ali in May of 2018, then Liam Smith in July of 2018, and then didn't fight a single former or current world champion in over 5 years, which is pretty interesting, and it kind of lets you know how slowly they've moved Munguia. But now they're putting him in with Canelo, and that's why I think it's a bit of a risk. I feel they didn't ease him into a Canelo fight. They eased him into maybe a Demetrius Andrade fight, maybe a Caleb Plant, maybe. I wouldn't pick him to beat Plant, but they eased him into that type of matchup, a Demetrius Andrade type of matchup, a Jermall Charlo type of matchup. I think Canelo's too big too soon, and I see him losing this bout. You guys tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. What's your prediction? What do you think about the fight? Are you looking forward to it? Do you think it's the best fight that can be made for Canelo? I don't think so, but I'm still going to enjoy watching it. Have a good one, guys. God bless. I'll see you guys later. Peace.